Now let's talk about it in an instant audit. Fox Business contributor Charles Payne's here, and Ron Davari from NewOak Capital has been with us all morning as well. Boy, I guess if B of A thought this thing was going away, they were wrong, huh?
I tell you, it's like every other day, and it gets more explosive. It's becoming the financial version of Watergate. And you could think of Adolphus Towns as the new Sam Ervin, and he wants to know, what did you know and when did you know it? And you know what? So do I.
Would you like to get to the bottom of this thing?
Let's do it.
It's starting to get interesting. So forget it, that this attorney-client privilege. What do you think, Ron?
Oh, well, I think it's really a major problem to go into that. They're in the midst of 6 separate investigations, and we know that there's obviously things that they knew, and I think that's the case for a lot of when you're in a downturn economy. Companies are hesitant to really give out the news to stockholders. Mm-hmm. And it's not just Bank of America. I think there's a lot of other cases that we need to know more about what happened. The acquisition of Countrywide, the acquisition of Merrill Lynch, by Bank of America, the Wells Fargo bid for Wachovia, and there's a lot of things that we don't know.
But this is the only one that really, truly, you could say was subsidized by the taxpayers. And you might wonder why Bank of America got that extra, first they took $20 billion, $25 billion, then they got an extra amount of money. It seems like that could have been part of the deal. Okay, we know you're overpaying. We'll ship you another $20 billion.
Well, they wanted to get out, but we told, essentially we thought that if Merrill Lynch go down, then you got the whole system falling apart.
But that brings us to the point that we have to think about, right? Because as to your point right now, Bank of America still has a lot of taxpayer money. So we also have their Attorney General of New York talking about maybe criminal fraud charges against Ken Lewis. What does that mean for the? We need to see, as taxpayers, in some ways, we need to see this bank succeed because we need to get paid. So how do we not undermine our own process, right? Our own investment in the bank,
right? Well,
and make sure that this, that we don't have.
If we go down this path where, by any means necessary, even if it means we break laws just so that the government makes money, then we're going down the wrong path, And I sense we are when you see a marijuana leaf on the cover of Fortune magazine. I mean, maybe we've lost our scruples and principles as a nation, and maybe we just go down. Maybe the government could start selling marijuana.
Well, shouldn't the government be involved then? If the government's investigating Bank of America, didn't the government then know terms about what Bank of America knew about Merrill's?
Well, that's the point. You know what? There's a lot of people who are guilty here, and you know what? I think the American public deserves at least to know, even though it feels like after the fact type of stuff, and maybe even the lynch mob mentality. This is something that's we're talking. Yeah, some answers. It's a lot of money, and it's again principles are involved.
But the principle, though, we can't just change the laws after the fact. I think the attorney-client privilege is a sacred thing, because if we actually violate that at the end of the day, then there is no way for people to really seek advice. There are certain things, the rules of the game that we need to follow, and I think it is very important when you got six other investigation going on. If you actually have the information made public, how do you expect, essentially the Bank of America as an entity be able to defend itself for the path that it went down? So I think the rules have to stay fair.
There's no doubt that you have to be careful with that, but also, can companies hide behind that? And indefinitely, every single time something goes wrong, we can't explain it because attorney-client privileges or our accountant.
The other final point in all this, Jenna mentioned this earlier, is that the boards of directors, whether it's this case or in other cases, are being really brought into question in terms of, are they just friends of the CEO, or they really have some level of independence? Chad Holliday was a longtime CEO at DuPont, is now the chairman, joins the B of A board. Sure. You make anything of that, Ron?
Oh, sure. I think the industrial firms actually have done a much better job in terms of governance, in terms of aligning themselves with the shareholders long term. And I think the financial industry needs to follow that. Mm-hmm. And I think bringing some of that culture into financial industry is very important. I really do believe the outside boards are extremely important to get some of the governance back into the financial. I don't think the debate is, everybody knows, we all agree that the governance is a big problem in the financial industry. You do have essentially the management that controls the board, and ultimately they're driven by really what I consider very, very aggressive trader mentality in these markets, and we need to get some stability in that for bringing confidence back in our own financial system. But Glass-Steagall, I think we need to also separate, real true banking from investment banking. we need to go back and really examine whether we need to have both of those cultures existing in one place. One is really trying to deal with the realities of the market, and the other is really dealing with the real people under, that are needing credit. And so that's really the real problem. We need to go back to the principle rather than trying to make a poster child out of Bank of America.
All right. A lot of people, I've heard that from a number of people the last few weeks, so we'll see what happens with that and regulatory reform and everything else. Thank you, Ron. And Charles, back over to Ashley now. All right, let's get you set here, squawk about the trading day ahead of us.
And joining us once again, Charles Payne, and we also have the CEO of NewOak Capital, Ron Devari, with us this morning.
Morning.
Ron, starting off with you, we've seen a lot of weakness in the dollar as of late. We've seen that reflected in commodities. Some moves in gold and oil this morning. Where are you in this trade? Do you like the dollar because everyone else thinks it's weak? Do you like certain commodities? How are you viewing this market?
Well, it all depends. We know that the Fed is going to keep the rates low, so the dollar, the greenback is going to be a low yielding. So we now have the equivalent of carry trade. Remember, people used to borrow in yen and lend in dollar. Now they're borrowing in dollar and lending in yen. Yep. So that means they're selling dollars short. And to the extent that we know that the Fed is going to stay on that path, that's going to happen. In terms of the gold, a lot of people say the gold was driven by China buying, and if they stop buying, the support for gold will go away. And obviously that doesn't jive with the dollar weakness. You do expect the gold and dollar be acting the opposite and being essentially become the currency of reserve, if you will, for some of the. They have a lot of people have a lot of exposure to U.S. and U.S. debt, U.S. dollar, and they want to reduce that.
Right. Charles, quick take on the stock market, too, before we wrap things up here, because everybody's written the article this weekend about the rally giving up the steam here, historically looking and everything else. Heard that one before.
Yeah, waiting for that long-awaited pullback. Listen, I think any pullback could be pretty good. I always thought 9,600 on the Dow was an important number on the upside, so I look at that as a pivotal support point. If it came near there and turned back up, I think people probably, particularly if they can trade, would want to probably get back in for that testing of 10,000.
Testing of 10,000. All right. There you go. Thanks, guys.
All right.
Good to see you, Ron.
As well.
That does